Hi, McCartney fans, and welcome to another edition of Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast. We are a Paul McCartney talk show mainly dealing with the solo career of Paul McCartney. I'm one of your two co-hosts, Tom Hunyady. And as always, I am joined by my partner in crime, my backwards traveler, the one and only Andy Nicholes. Andy, what's going on, my friend?
Trying to stay cool here in hot New Jersey, but that's no stranger to you, Mr. Arizona.
Exactly,
So
yeah,
I'm
exactly.
preaching to the
Our
choir.
hot makes your hot look like it's winter over there.
Yeah, I know. But I'm good. Thanks for putting together another show.
Yes, sir. And as you can see, we have another guest with us today, and he is the one and only Dan Ealey. Dan, how are you?
Thank you. I'm great. I'll take your heat in Arizona and New Jersey, and I'll combine it with the humidity here in Tennessee.
Right. I'll take the dry heat any day of the week over the humidity.
Yes.
But anyways, we're not going to talk about the weather. Dan's got this amazing story that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. But first, we're just going to talk about a little bit of news, which is the Beautiful Night EP, which he did earlier with Young Boy, right? He did a Young Boy, and I think he did a World Tonight.
Yeah, there's been the 3 digital EPs, Young Boy,
Right.
World Tonight, and now Beautiful Night. Although this one's been a little bit different because we've got extra stuff on this one, and we get the much sought after 1995 demo of Beautiful Night included on there.
Right now, and then you had the run through with featuring Ringo, which is really cool, which is nice. You get the new remix or remastered version of Beautiful Night as well. You get to Ubu Jubu. So another nice set. It's only like we said, it's only digital, so no physical format on this.
Yeah. And the video remaster was also dropped on his website.
Beautiful remaster of the video, as has been the case with the last couple videos he's been dropping over the last really since December with Wonderful Christmas Time. All of these videos he's been giving us have been some nice work has been done on them. Some restoration. I don't know if he's really actually doing any restoration on these videos, but they're transferring them into like a high quality HD.
Upscaling them.
Yeah, exactly. And they're vastly improved for sure. A lot better than the McCartney box.
And that's a special video because it was Linda's last one.
Exactly. Yeah. So Beautiful Night is a little bit of an emotional video because, like you said, that is the last video she appeared in, and it's a fun video. It's cool seeing Ringo in the video as well, and it's not. I know he caught a little heat because he's had some partial nudity in the video at the end there, but it's fine with me.
Yeah, absolutely. But so the Flaming Pie the archive is quickly approaching.
Absolutely looking forward to it. So that's it for news for this week. And like I said, we've got Dan Ealey here, who has this amazing story. He got to witness stuff that really is a once in a lifetime experience, and he's gonna tell this story. And just, oh my God, we were talking a few days ago, and Dan, these stories are really just fantastic. This experience that you had, man, I mean, it just doesn't happen. And and you got to be one of these lucky people. But before we get into that, let's talk about you becoming a Beatles fan, and then switching over to being, after they break up, you go to Camp McCartney. Let's just talk about that for a few minutes. So how did you become aware of the Beatles?
On Sunday, February 7th, 1964, I went to my local movie theater. Before the movie started, one of my friends who was in my Cub Scout pack yelled over the seats, "Hey Dan, are you going to watch the Beatles tonight?" And I replied, "What's the Beatles?" And he said, "Just watch Ed Sullivan tonight." Mm-hmm. So like everyone else, some people played sick to stay home. Other people laid out of church to watch it. But that's my first ever hearing the term the Beatles. And I always say the next day, life changed as we knew it.
Right.
It was all about the Beatles, the fashion, the clothes, how they spoke, the music, and that's how it all happened for me.
Mm.
Thank you, Mike Nicholes, for doing that for me wherever you are.
So you got to see them. So the following day, I mean, are you going out looking for their records, or I mean, are you collecting their albums as the years go on?
I'm 9 at the time, so my access to their records is slim.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I first set of Beatle albums I bought from a friend up the street, his used records. And so mostly it was just me listening to them on the radio, maybe picking up a 45 now and then. I still have the records I bought from my friend up the street.
Oh, wow.
That were, semi-scratched up, but didn't matter at the time. But I made up for it over the years. I've contributed a significant amount to their wealth. I continue to do so today.
Oh, yeah. They have a lot of us to thank for that.
Yeah. So did you have a favorite singer from the batch while you're getting more and more into the Beatles, or did you just like all of them?
It was always Paul. I mean, of course, I loved all the Beatles, but Paul was, for whatever reason, was my favorite.
Okay.
And then, of course, later on, when I started playing guitar, I ended up switching to bass. And so, no, it was always Paul for me.
Okay. So then, when the Beatles broke up, you just naturally, ventured into the McCartney camp during the solo careers. Then.
Well, when the Beatles broke up, through the years, a couple of friends of mine, we'd have arguments over and hang up on each other, and call each other names over who's taking sides. In fact, at the farm, I discussed this with Paul.
Oh.
That when the Beatles broke up, some of the fans broke up too. Can you imagine? I'm standing toe to toe with Paul, and I'm having this conversation about how the fans broke up when the Beatles broke up. I said, some of the fans went with John, and some of the fans went with you, and there were friendships lost over that.
Dan, did you follow and all the solo Beatles and buy all their records, or mainly just Paul?
Well, I always made sure I got all of Paul's, and I do have all the others too. I'm not sure that I have every single one. I have so many that I've never really kept a count like that. I'll have friends who call me up and say, hey, you have this record. I don't even know I have it because I have so many, and I've never really, until recently, one of my friends said for me to put my albums in chronological order, and that's when I started finding out I had, 10 copies of the White Album and 12 copies of Meet the Beatles. And then I have all the single 8 tracks, cassettes. So what I'm missing, I don't really know. I mean, I'm pretty sure I have most of all their records.
Right. Gotcha. Cool. So if you can't tell yet, Dan here got to witness Paul McCartney and Wings rehearse for a few weeks. He got to hang out with them at the famous Curly Putman Jr.'s farm, really famously known as Junior's Farm, and he's going to tell his story today. And we're going to start off with how you became aware that Paul and Wings were coming to Tennessee or Nashville, where you're living.
Well, at 19 and I was 19 in 1974. I was playing in a band, and I kept up with everything about Paul and Wings. And I just picked up the newspaper one morning, the Nashville Tennessean, and there was a little blip in it by a columnist named Red O'Donnell. And he'd tell about what was happening on Music Row, a little short bits, and it said Paul McCartney rumored to visit Music Row. And a lot of times, it was just gossip, but I perked up and paid attention to it. Didn't know if it was real or not. Then 3 days later, the Tennessean has a story with a photograph of Paul getting off the plane with Linda and the kids at the Metro Airport. So that really launched me into a panic mode of, hey, I've got to do something. I said, if Paul is coming to Nashville, I'm going to meet him. So that was the catalyst to get me to come up with this idea. I ran a self-service gas station. I was the manager, so I had a little bit of time there to kill during the day. So I had subscribed to different magazines, but I had my latest issue of Melody Maker, which a British trade magazine, which I always liked much better than the ones here in America. And when I opened it up, pardon me?
They had an office. They had an office here in New York, I believe, right?
When I opened the magazine, I was coming up with this. Maybe I could represent the press as a member of the press, because I'm sure he'll have a news conference. This was my train of thought. And when I opened up my Melody Maker and looked down the editorial page, it gave, the editor, assistant editor, all that information, and it said Chris Charlesworth, U.S. editor,
right,
and a telephone number.
Oh.
So I thought, I'll call him up, pretend to be a reporter. It's a British magazine. Wings would like to know that they're being represented. I think that would get their attention. And so I did. I dialed the number. He answered.
Now, 1 second, Dan. Was this like how soon after you found out that they were here, that they actually landed, that you did this? Was this like the next day or day after?
It was like the next day. The letter, I think, that I got from Chris Charlesworth, I think is dated June 9th.
Okay. So
it was like probably the next day, because I would not have delayed of coming up with this. I would have been in the...
Yeah, you would have acted very quickly.
Yeah, I would have been on it to get this together. And so he asked me, I told him I'm a stringer reporter in Nashville, and I'd like to represent Melody Maker magazine for any news conference that Paul and Wings would have in Nashville. I wanted to avoid any conversation about my history in my experience as a reporter, because the only experience I had was writing a music article in my high school newspaper. So he did ask me, well, do you have any experience? And I blew it off as, well, yes, I've wrote several articles for magazines and newspapers on music here in Tennessee. And I didn't want to have a really prolonged conversation with him. I said, I'm going to need a letter from you, a letter of authorization, if you want me to do this. Right. He said, well, that's no problem. Give me your address. And as quick as I can handle it and get off the phone, that was my mission, because I didn't want him to trap me into something that sounded like I couldn't handle the job.
Gotcha.
So I get the job.
Mm-hmm.
And a few days later, I get the letter.
Okay.
So a mission accomplished on that.
Right. Yeah. So you're batting 1,000 right now. You call Melody Maker. You get the actual letter saying that you can represent Melody Maker for any party or any interview that McCartney may be giving while he's in town. So
that letter
congratulations there.
That letter is like I happen to just find the letter on Google when I was doing a little research for the episode. Boom! There the letter pops right up, and I read it. And for the video version, we'll show it here so you guys can read it. But that's an official letter from the Chris Charlesworth from Melody Maker, which is pretty awesome.
You get it in the mail. I mean, what's your next step?
Well, I had made several phone calls to Nashville trying to find somebody that would know something, and I made calls. I remember to the ASCAP, to BMI, I'd heard a rumor about a PR firm that may be handling Paul in Nashville. So I called them, and eventually I get bits and pieces of information. And the information was that Paul is staying in Lebanon. It's on Franklin Road, and it's a mansion owned by a doctor. And that was all the information I had to go with.
And Chris at Melody Maker, he didn't know where they were staying.
Oh, no. He didn't.
Nobody really knew.
He didn't even know they were in Nashville. This was a hush-hush secret thing until it hit the paper in Nashville.
Okay. So you find out you all you have is this rumor or this lead where you're not 100% sure. So explain to us how far Lebanon then is from where you are. I mean, are you in Nashville at the time?
No, I'm in Cookeville, where I still live today. That's about 60 miles from me.
Okay.
On I-40.
Okay.
And so I'm off on Sundays. Mm-hmm. I'm still playing in a band. I always said I had more jobs than Dick Clark, so I was managing a band, managing bands and booking bands, and playing in my own band, and managing this self-service gas station full time, and other jobs. And but I decide on Sunday I'm going to get up. I'm off on Sunday. And I'm going to drive down there, and I'm going to see if I can find this place. And
at this point, they've already been there for a few days.
Just a few days, yes.
Right. Maybe so this is how soon you're already on it. I mean, you're just making things happen as quickly as possible.
Somebody told me it was the 16th of June that I went. I mean, I've had people try to put together a timeline. It was a Sunday, and I got the letter on the 9th of June. And I'm sure I would have went the next Sunday after that.
So the whole turnaround of contacting Chris Charlesworth and getting your letter was pretty quick for those days.
It was quick. Thank goodness that I did get that. It was helpful. It wasn't everything, but I think it was the foot in the door that sort of opened it for me.
Sure.
Okay. So you get in the car. It's a Sunday morning. You're taking off. You're heading towards Lebanon. Let's talk about you're getting closer to what you think your destination is, and let's continue there.
Well, I find Franklin Road, which is a rural back road in Wilson County, and I'm just driving looking for something that would stick out, a mansion. Right. And it's a long road. And all I see on a Sunday morning, I remember it was about 10:30 in the morning, and I was driving, and of course there's nobody on the road. There's no traffic. It's a country road, typical houses, bungalows along the way. And I don't see anything that gives me anything positive that I'm even on the right road or the lead's even correct. So at some point, I'm going to turn around and come back home because I can't find anything.
Gotcha.
I decided that I would ask somebody if they could, if they had any information, if I could find anyone to ask. And as I turn around to start back toward to hit the interstate, I see one man walking on the road in overalls, and I've convinced myself that there's no way this guy knows anything that's going to be helpful to me. He looks like a farmer.
Older gentleman?
Yes, he was older, overalls, and I eased up to him and reached over to my passenger side window and rolled it down. I leaned over, and he sort of leaned his head into the window, and I said, "Sir, I'm looking for a place here on Franklin Road. It's a doctor's house, a mansion with a pool." And I look at it, he says, no, there's nothing like that on Franklin Road. I mean, I was thinking, how does he know? It's a long road. But, I mean, he was so sure. no, there's nothing like that on Franklin Road. Well, I had told myself, don't mention the Beatles to him. So I went back over it again. I said, sir, I said, are you sure it's supposed to be a large house, a mansion with a pool, a doctor owns it? He said, there's nothing like that here on Franklin Road.
Mm.
So I paused and I said, well, one of the Beatles is supposed to be staying there. He says, you mean those fellers from England? And I looked, I said, yes, sir. Yes, they're from England. He goes, well, they're staying up at Junior Putman's place.
Mm.
But they don't have a swimming pool. I said, well, where is it? I mean, can you believe that the only person out on the road, the most
knows exactly where they are,
right,
knows the information I need. And if he hadn't have been there, I would have been going back home, and this story probably would have never happened.
Because apparently you didn't drive far enough to see the house that he was talking about, right?
I mean, it's a long road. When do you know where to stop?
Right,
and,
right.
But no, I had not gone down the road far enough. So I was a little nervous that he told me it's just down there. Still afraid I'm going to miss it. So I said, well, now where is it?
Yeah, because just down the road could mean like 5 miles.
Yeah. He said, well, no, you just go straight on down the road. It's around the curve. So as I drive down there, I reach over to touch the Chris Charlesworth letter to adjust it in the seat, because I'm going to use that if I'm lucky to find the place. Suddenly, as I look to the left, it's such an obvious place. I mean, it's not like a
mansion.
I'm not sure if this is it or not. Suddenly, all the bells and lights go off, and you go, yes, this has to be it, because it's a fabulous piece of property.
Okay.
And normally, I mean, I drive by the front entrance, and my plan is to pull in the driveway of the next house, which is pretty close up to the entrance.
Okay.
Well, when I pull in that driveway, there's 2 people out in the yard under the shade tree, and it's Denny and Jimmy. Wow.
All right. Before we continue with that, just describe the place. I mean, now, Junior Putman. I mean, he's a well-known individual at this time.
Junior Putnam wrote The Green, Green Grass of Home, Divorce.
Yep.
He Stopped Loving Her Today.
Oh, wow.
The Elusive Dream. And this whole thing about Junior wrote for Tree Publishing Company, which was owned by Buddy Killen, whose lawyers were Linda's father and brother, John and Lee.
So there's a connection.
This is the connection.
Oh, there's the connection to Linda's family. Okay.
Right.
And they had told Buddy they were looking for a place for Paul, and Buddy Killen said, Junior, you could let him stay at your place.
Because he's not there at the time.
Well, he is there.
Okay.
He is there, but he's going to greet them, and then he and his wife, Bernice, and their son are going to get on a plane and go to Hawaii for 6 weeks.
Okay.
So when you pull up, I mean, it's 133 acres.
Wow.
Had a barn out front, a large white barn. It's gone now. A big white fence, columns, and the house is like a southern mansion, 1,000 yards up the driveway.
Okay.
And then as you pass the entrance, there's a little bungalow right up front with a separate garage, and that is what became known as the guest or gatehouse where the band spent a lot of time.
Okay.
But you instantly know when you drive by, this is it.
Right.
Because there's nothing else like it there.
Right.
Horses too, because I know they're big horse. They're the fans of horseback riding and stuff like that.
Yes, they had horses.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so you pull up like you said, and there's Denny, there's Jimmy. Your mind's got to be going a mile in a minute now. What to do?
Well, I mean, they're right there beside the car in the yard under the shade tree. And I have my Rickenbacker bass with me in the car. I'm not sure what thought process I went through to say, hey, I'm going to go find Paul and Wings and we'll take my bass. I don't know. I don't know, but obviously it came into play and I had it with me. So as I pull up and get out, I reach for the letter and I introduce myself to them. I said, I'm Dan Ealey. I'm with Melody Maker magazine. Mm-hmm. And I don't get much of a reaction, just sort of like, oh, hello. And sort of, they didn't say much. And in looking back on it, I think it had to do with Paul not being real receptive to reporters.
Right.
So I said to Jimmy, well, you know who Chris Charlesworth is, don't you? Mm-hmm. He goes, yeah, I know who Chris Charlesworth is. And so I just did the name dropping and we started talking and they had a guitar. I said, we have a Les Paul in the car. You want to see it? He said, yeah, bring it out. So Denny got the guitar first and I said, Denny, will you show us the opening lick to Band on the Run? And Denny says, oh, I don't want to play a guitar, man. I don't want to play no guitar. And Jimmy goes, hey, let me see it. I'll show you. And Jimmy plays the opening lick. And after that, it just seems like the ice broke. Right.
Well, you bringing out the instruments or bringing out the guitar was the icebreaker then.
I think it was. It was. It's a musician thing.
Sure. Right. You're not going, I mean, you're masquerading as a reporter, but you're a musician, and that's what, that's the connection.
I had a case of magazines on McCartney and Wings with me. I had a case of albums with me. Mm-hmm. I don't know why I just showed up with all this, but a lot of times down there at the farm, the band was bored.
Right.
And it would be so hot during the day that they would wait until the afternoon to rehearse. And so they were just sitting around spinning their wheels. There was no air conditioning in the gatehouse.
Oh, wow.
And so they would be outside under the shade tree, a fan going inside with the doors and windows open.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, because you remember these English guys aren't used to the heat like that.
That's true. And I think I just provided some entertainment for them.
So at what point does Jeff Britton make his appearance? I mean, is it the same day, or do you meet him a following day, or?
I think he was around that day.
Okay.
Jeff was a little different than the others.
Right.
I thought that it registered with me that Jeff was different. He was working out there at the farm. He was doing his push-ups, knuckle push-ups. He was in his karate. Right. And he was doing his staying in shape. It was about healthy eating for him, and he seemed to be a little different than the others.
Right. Gotcha. Now you got to imagine, you're doing this back then in June of '74. Nothing like this could happen these days today like this. I mean, you're talking, security guards all over the place, these days. You probably nothing like this after Lennon's death. I'm sure, nothing like this could ever happen again. So
No.
this is
a once in a lifetime thing. It really is.
Right, exactly.
And I go every day, and every day I'd have a carload of things for them. I would bring gifts. I would bring gifts for the kids.
Right.
And I don't know, we somehow just clicked. Jimmy wasn't that much older than me.
Right.
He was only maybe 3 or 4 years older than me. And, they can tell when you're a fan.
Right.
And for whatever reason, I can't really explain, it just clicked. They liked me. I liked them. And
so they never felt any threat from you?
No. In fact, they had my number. They called me at home one day, and I'd call them.
Right. Because they're strangers in a strange land, and they're meeting a local. So
right.
It's supposed to be one guy who strolls up to them, out of the blue, who seems to be a pretty nice, easygoing guy. Why not? Right. Why not talk to him?
Well, he's bringing out some guitars, and they like that, and
yeah.
So the days are going by. You're getting established. You're starting to bring gifts for the kids. You're bringing gifts for the band members. Matter of fact, later on we'll talk about a shirt that you got for Paul. That's been in pictures that we'll show later on. Excuse me, as well. Talk about now these days. You're getting more established. You're getting more comfortable with them. They're getting more comfortable with you. I mean, are they rehearsing by this time, or are they just still getting comfortable?
No, they're rehearsing in the afternoon. Also, I would need to tell you, it's important meeting Alan Crowder.
Okay,
absolutely.
Right-hand man there.
Yep, right. MPL.
MPL. Yep. All these guys were super nice to me, very cordial, and they started to, I think, have some trust in me, because they asked me, Dan, do you know where we can get a steel guitar player? And I said, yes, you can get Pete Drake.
Yeah. Oh, famous Pete Drake.
Of course, yeah.
And Alan said, well, we can't use Pete Drake. Paul doesn't want to use him because he played on George's stuff.
George's record, all things must pass. Played on Ringo's Buku's the Blues as well.
Yeah.
So that gives you a little insight as to how that sort of thing works. So, and eventually they would ask me about other, things. Do you know where we could rent a motor home? And they would figure I'm the local guy on the, so they'd ask me information.
Right. That's amazing.
They did tell me this, Denny and Jimmy did tell me, whatever you do, do not let Paul know that you're a reporter. He has
okay. So they still,
yeah, because
the next following days, I mean, they still think you're a reporter.
And that's
but I told them at that point when they
told them, but they knew not to tell Paul, and that's probably a very wise decision, because the 1970s music press was not fair to McCartney at all. So if they knew you were a reporter, that would have been the end of the whole thing. Because
the great thing is they were covering for me for a few days,
which is great.
But when they brought that up, said, look, don't let Paul know you're a reporter. He hates reporters. I said, look, I don't care anything about writing any story. I just want to meet you guys and be here with you. And it was never mentioned again. The only other thing come up at one point, they were looking through my records and they found some bootlegs.
Oh, yeah.
And they said, they pulled out one. They said, hey, whatever you do not let Paul see these bootlegs.
Right.
So it was some interesting insight.
Right.
There,
Now he wouldn't care, but back then it was like, so taboo.
Yeah.
I don't know if he'd care or not. I don't want to find out. But he's sort of sensitive about the lack of royalties on that.
Right.
Yeah.
He put out the official bootleg album
Right.
to try to counter some of that at some point.
Right. So as these rehearsals are going on, you still haven't really been face to face with McCartney yet, then, right?
Well, I've seen him, yes, up
Right.
and down the driveway on a motorbike. I'd wave at him. He'd wave at me. And then sometimes the car, they had two rental cars, they would come down the drive and he would get out and go over to the pond and they would swim. And so I would see him at a distance. I'd met, Heather.
Okay.
And so I guess they were all I guess he was finding out who I am.
Okay. So the band really didn't tell him about you. I mean, because he really didn't have any clue as to why you were there, as opposed as like Jimmy and Denny knew why you were there.
Well, I don't know what they told him.
Okay.
About why I was there. I know that I had the issue with Heather where she said Linda told her to come down and find out who I am, to get rid of me if I don't belong there. And I thought that day was going to be my last.
Right. So this is during the rehearsals. You have a recorder.
Yes.
And
So
at what point did you start recording them once you got into the camp?
Well, I would listen to them rehearse, and I was hearing what you have to think about 1974 when I'm standing there. Paul has not toured America since the Beatles.
Yep.
So I'm getting a one-man concert. I'm the only person in the audience.
Right.
And I'm hearing Jet, Man on the Run, Little Woman Love, High, 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 all these tunes that you could, at this point, you could have only dreamed to ever hearing live.
Sure.
Now, did you find out that they were actually rehearsing for a world tour at this point?
Oh.
Well, I just assumed that they were.
Well, a little early. I mean, I don't think the world tour was really in the works at this point.
It was, yeah, that's why I'm trying to figure out.
I think it was too soon.
Timeline is everything.
I don't think the world tour really takes off until Venus and Mars.
Until after Venus and Mars,
well, it didn't take off till like 76, but he had his band touring Europe.
Well, 75. The world tour starts in September of 75.
Yeah, but, he had the band. The band had done the tour in Europe.
Right.
They had lost members. And I just assumed he was going to replace them. And at some point, I'd always read that he wanted to do those dates in Europe to get ready for U.S.
Right.
And so I was just assuming that they're going to tour at some point, come to America, and he's having all these hits.
Gotcha.
So if you could paint a picture visually for us, like the barn, the proximity of you, listening to the band rehearse, describe that visually.
Okay, well, you have the entrance up front, the guest house slightly to the right of it, the barn slightly to the left, and then the house is like 1,000 yards, I don't know. It's a long way up the hill, and I'm standing up about midways up in the field with a tape recorder. Gotcha. The garage is to the left, and they have the garage doors open. And so it radiates down the valley there.
Gotcha.
The house is up on a hill, and I'm about halfway down listening. And, it's as you can imagine, being in the garage, it's just projecting out.
Oh, right out. Yeah.
And so I'm hearing all this, plus conversations and
so early on in these recordings that you're doing, that's when you get your encounter with Heather.
Yes. I for a few days I didn't even think about recording them. And then I thought, hey, I had to borrow this cassette recorder, which had this shoulder strap on it. And I borrowed it from a friend of mine who was a Nashville TV personality, and had a separate mic on it on a cable, and I had it under my arm. I hear, see, she's riding a horse, and there's a large German Shepherd alongside of her.
Wow.
And she approaches me.
Mm-hmm.
And this dog is panting, and this horse is galloping. And I grab the strap on my recorder and pull it down where it sort of pulls it behind me. But
Right.
it's still recording.
Right.
And that's when she said, my mother sent me to find out who you are.
Mm.
And if you don't belong here, to get rid of you. And I
Mhm.
said, well, I'm friends with Jeffrey.
Right.
And she said, well, I said, I'm not really bothering anything. She said, actually, you are.
Mm.
And why don't you go beyond that fence or go out to lunch or something? So, I mean, I was trying to respectfully stand my ground. I was not going to leave unless I was absolutely forced to.
Right.
And I told her, well, I'm friends with Jeffrey, which was
Mhm.
Jeff Britton.
Right.
And I want to hear Paul McCartney practice too.
Well, my mom said to me, what are those people doing down there? And I said, I suppose they're Greg's friends. And she gave me a look and saying, if they aren't, get rid of them. Why don't you, like, go out for lunch or something and come back in a couple of hours?
Well,
Or just go out for a drive or something?
well, Paul McCartney's practicing. I want to hear him practice too.
And if you hear the recording, which you can
Right.
hear on YouTube, then that's the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because of that conversation, I never really, at the farm, spent any time talking to Linda, because I got the impression that Linda sort of wore the pants
Oh.
in the family there.
In
And,
terms of that stuff, I think she did, yeah, protect
although
them.
I did meet Linda a couple of different times there and spent some time with her in her presence,
Okay.
I never really engaged her in any conversation. I just thought that I would be better off staying clear of that, you know.
Right.
Who knows? Who knows? You never know.
Right. So you're also still working. You're still managing the gas station at this point, and then every opportunity you get, you're heading over to the farm.
I get off at 2 p.m, and I know that the statute of limitations is expired now, but I could make it. Should have been a 45-minute drive from my hometown
Right.
to there, but they'd make it in about 20. And one day I'm in the house.
Dukes of
and-
Hazzard style.
Yeah.
Yes. One day I'm in the house, the guest house, and there's a one-sided demo record there, laying there, and I asked Jimmy about it, and it was soily.
Oh wow.
And it's spelled on the record, written in hand,
Right.
more of an acetate, Soilie,
Mm.
which was not the way they ended up spelling it.
Spelling it. Right.
And
Right.
in June of '74 here, it's not been released. Well,
Mhm.
Jimmy gives it to me,
Oh wow.
and I still have it today. Well, I come back home and I recorded it because I didn't want to play it all the time.
Right.
My band learned the song, and while Paul is in Lebanon, we're playing it up here in clubs.
Nice.
Not even out yet.
The problem with it, if you know the song, we can't figure out all the words.
Words. Yeah.
You know, it's got cats and satin, silly boy, or whatever. And so we just make up those parts. That part of the
that's funny.
song. But we are out playing this song soily, and we're telling people, hey, I've been hanging out with McCartney. This is one of his songs that's not been released, and we would play the song soily.
Wow.
And so I still have it today, and I think it says dated 12/6/74, but that would have been the English.
That's how the Brits, the date first, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I still have that today. It's on EMI
Mhm.
and Road label, and it's just handwritten. Says live in Newcastle. So I got
Now-
that.
Okay, so you're technically the owner of that, but you technically can't do anything with it because you don't actually own the rights to the song.
Well, I can do something with it, but it's limited to what I can do.
Right. You can't actually sell copies of it.
No, because I don't own the rights to it.
Right,
You'd have to get a music attorney in on these recordings, but what I'm told by the people that are in the know on that is that actually legally Paul and I both own them, the rights to them, because we're not talking about Soily demo, but we're talking about the other recordings that I did.
Okay, you're talking about the recordings that Heather is a part of.
Right.
Yeah, that Paul and I are both co-owners in those, and I can't do anything without him on them, and he can't do anything without me on them. So I still have them after all 46 years now.
Did you hopefully digitize them and preserve them that way? Good.
Yes. Yeah, I have them in 2 or 3 different formats, including the original formats. The funny thing about the recordings is I'm listening every day, and I know all these songs like the back of my hand, but I hear this song that I don't know.
Right. Yeah. So you're actually hearing during these rehearsals, you're hearing the start of a brand new song.
Yes, and the opening goes on and on and on in the rehearsal. They're working out these parts, and they're slow and they're fast, and I'm standing out in the 98-degree
blazing heat.
Yeah, and I'm wanting them to move on. Let's get on to another song, And I remember one day Denny coming in when they had been rehearsing that, and I said, Denny, what is that song that over and over and over? He goes, well, you'll find out later.
Right.
So eventually.
October.
Well, eventually, I find out they play the whole song on my tape, and it's in June. And they don't even go to the Sound Shop studio till July, the first week of July, to record Junior's Farm.
Right.
So,
now, did you get to witness any of these professional recordings while you were there?
No.
In the studio?
No, my visits were strictly
to the farm.
Okay. So, you had people that were at the studio when they were recording, but they were never at the farm. So I was living the more of a personal adventure with them at the farm on a daily basis.
Right.
Did you hear them working out Sally G too?
No, I didn't hear them work out Sally G. I never heard. Now, Jeff Britton told me that they had been down to Printer's Alley.
Right.
And that the next morning, early, Paul got up and came downstairs and he said, listen to this, something I'm working on. And he had pretty much Sally G together.
Yeah, I think it was, is it called Rainbow Skull Room, I think? Or is it Skull Rainbow's Room? Something
Skull's
like that.
Rainbow Room.
Where they were, where he got the inspiration to write the song.
Jeff had told me that when they went in, it was a surreal experience. It's like he looked over and there's Waylon Jennings on the piano.
Waylon Jennings was there, yeah.
And but that was the inspiration. That was the inspiration for the song.
Right.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. Let's talk about, then as the weeks go on, then now this is his birthday month as well. He's still there. And you got this great story about, his birthday party.
Well, they're pretty much used to me showing up every day. I think that I get off at 2, and I would always go prepared to hit the interstate. I mean, where my job was fairly close to the interstate, so I was loaded and ready to go as soon as 2 o'clock rang, and I'm in the car and I'm on Interstate 40, and so I pull up one day.
Are you going there straight from work? You're not even going home or anything like that.
You have all your gear, you got all your records, you got all your memorabilia in the car, loaded up.
Ready to go. My shift is from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Right.
And so I'm loaded up. My stuff is there. I'm not going back home from work. I'm going, hey, I'm too excited every day of this, what's going on in my life.
Right.
I'm living this dream and I'm soaking it up every day. So I'm headed to the farm. In fact, on my birthday, on July 2nd of 74, my mother asked me, what would you like for your birthday? And I said, nothing. I'm going to go to the farm and I'm going to spend it with Paul and Wings. And I'll always remember turning 20
Right.
at Junior's farm. And that's what I did.
Oh,
That's awesome.
But
So before we get to that birthday story, have you already given the bass to Paul at this point?
at this point, when I got out of the car, as you can see here on the shirt, Denny is with the bass.
Right.
And he's dancing around with it, and he's having this real good time with it. And he turns to me and said, hey, Paul would love this. Now, I've had people ask me, well, why would you give Paul this right-handed bass? He's left-handed.
Right.
Well, I didn't offer to give it to him. It was Denny that suggested I give it. And, of course, you know, Paul started out playing right-handed.
He can play both.
Either way. Most of his instruments are right-handed. But Denny said, Paul would love this. Well, what else am I going to say? I said, well, then give it to him. And I left it.
Right.
wow.
Interesting. So then let's talk about the birthday then. I mean,
All right. So
they're working the gate, but they want to join the party too.
Well, I show up one day. This is before the birthday, the day before. Okay. I show up.
Oh, yeah, because they didn't want you to be there for some reason.
I show up, and Jimmy comes up to me. He says, hey, be best if you don't come tomorrow. Well, I'd never had them ever tell me that before.
Right.
And I said, oh, what's going on? And he said, well, it'll just be better if you're not here. I said, okay. So I respected their wishes. The next day, I stayed home. But we had this tremendous electrical storm that day that I was not supposed to be there. Well, the next day, I'm back in the car. I'm back down the interstate, and I pull in, and I go into the guest house, and I noticed a little bit of activity that's abnormal. Is they come in the door with some cases of champagne, and they've got ice, and you know, this alarms are going off. What's going on? And I had a pair of binoculars with me, and I go over to the window at the guest house, which looks out across the farm toward the pond, and I see somebody down there at the pavilion, and I look in my binoculars, and I said, Paul's got my shirt on. He's got my shirt on. He's got my shirt on. That's all I could say. Right. And so Jimmy comes up to me, he says, look, we're having a little get-together for Paul's birthday down at the picnic area. They want us to work the gate, but we don't want to. But you could do it. Right. And if you will, then we'll take you down to meet Paul. And I said, well, what's work the gate mean? He says, well, you know, you'll be at the gate. You'll let people in that should be in, and you'll keep people out that shouldn't. Right. And I said, well, how would I know who's coming? He said, look, you'll know. It's Chet Atkins, Jerry Reed, and Roy Orbison. And if you'll do this, we'll take you down to meet Paul. I said, okay. So I head out there. It's probably, I would estimate it's probably about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And it is very hot. And I'm out there, and the picnic area is within viewing distance. It's 400, 500 feet away. I see Chet Atkins' white Cadillac there, and I can see people, you know, a few people milling around there under the typical looking pavilion like you would see at the park. And in a minute, here comes a black Porsche down the road, and it's signaling to pull in. And I look up, and it's Roy Orbison. And I notice as I'm waving him through, he has jet black leather jacket on. I look into the car, he's got black leather trousers on, and he has a jet black t-shirt on and huge jet black sunglasses, and his hair is combed down. And I'm looking, I think, God, it's hot. How could he? Then I stopped myself and I thought, hey, it's more important to look cool than to be cool. And so I flag him in. Now, I've figured out in my mind that in a little bit, whenever they get ready, Jimmy or Denny or Alan or Jeff is going to come up and get me. I've already decided this is the way this is going to work, and I'm just watching and waiting, and I have a little camera in my pocket. You know, cameras in '74 were very expensive,
now,
and mine was cheap.
Did you bring your friend at this point too, or
No.
is he there that day, or you hadn't brought him yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
And so I look and I see someone walking out away from the pavilion, and I get up on my toes and I look, and it's Paul, and he's wearing my shirt, and he's walking through the field toward me. I start, even though I was already sweating bullets, I was gasping. I was like, oh my God.
Here we go.
Paul is coming. And I keep watching him, and I ease down to my pocket without letting him know. It was a big mistake for me, and I slipped the camera out, and I put it up on the column.
Right.
I was so paranoid that something might make him upset with me.
Right.
That I should have kept it in my pocket, but I didn't. Well, he comes up to me, and he says, "You're the one with the bass." And I said, "That's right." He said, "You know, it would be silly for me to keep it."
And this, at this point, this is your first actual face-to-face talking with him.
It's any conversation of substance. I had talked to him at the car, hello, you know, and introduced people that was with me to him.
Right, but no, a real conversation.
A real conversation.
Right. Okay.
So Paul and I walked together back through the field down to the picnic pavilion, and the first thing he does is introduce me to Roy.
Oh, wow.
Oh, God.
And then they've got a little music going in the background, like on a little stereo there. It's a very low-key party. The band is there. There's some finger food, and Linda's in a long peasant dress, and Denny has his left arm around her waist, and Paul is to her side, and he has his right arm around her waist. There's just music going, and they're feeling pretty good, I think, at this point.
Champagne is flowing, huh?
And other substances, too, I'm sure.
I didn't see anything, but they seemed to be enjoying the evening.
Right.
But that was it was great. I mean, there's Roy, there's Paul and Linda and Denny, sort of just enjoying the night. It's Paul's birthday, and he's wearing my shirt. I mean, what better?
But he actually said to you that it would be silly for me to keep the bass?
Pardon me?
He said it would be silly for him to keep your bass?
He said, you know, it would be silly for me to keep the bass. And I find out later from Jeff what was going on about all that. Let me say one thing else about the little party here. You know, I did have a conversation with Paul that I told you about. We talked about the fan club. He told me to talk to his manager, Brian Broly, when he comes in. And we talked about the conversation about the fans and Paul and John waking up. And I tried to move away from him to not smother him at the party. And I went over, was talking to the band, and a little bit, Jimmy or Denny came over and said, Dan, Paul is hollering at you. And I turned around, and Paul and Linda had gotten into the rental car, which was pulled down there in the grass next to the pavilion. And Paul was waiting for me to come over to tell me goodbye. I mean, he was very conscious about, I think, his impression that he was giving me. That's how I felt about it.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So I go over to him, and he said, well, thanks for coming. We're leaving. And I said, hey, Paul, tonight, Yellow Submarine is on Nashville TV. Are you going to watch it? And he said, well, I don't know, maybe. And that was it for the party. Now, what Paul meant by the bass, giving the bass back, what did I tell you? He said,
it'd be silly for him to keep
yes. Years later, it takes me 40 years later to find out from Jeff what he meant by that.
All right. Well, we can get to that story. We'll talk about selling the bass and finding the bass. But let's just talk about the rest of the time that they're rehearsing, because you said they're there for pretty much for 6 weeks. You got to witness at least 3 of those weeks, right?
I think it was about 3 weeks. I sort of sensed when I was there, no one hardly knew anything about where they were. Now, as time goes on, they showed up one day and they all went to Opryland amusement park. And I'm at home and I see them on TV. And,
no.
And they're in the security is in a circle around them, like linked arm to arm, and they're walking them through Opryland amusement park. Well, I mean,
that's it. The cover's blown.
The word's going to get out
now. Yeah.
And I really didn't want to be around during all that kind of thing.
Right. With all the massive people around and everything.
Yeah. And Paul ends up having a press conference at the farm.
Wow.
And
so. Yeah, and that was going to be another question, man. At what point during this, while you're there, that there's actual press conference?
Well, I left before they actually had the press conference.
Okay.
But people were starting to show up. And I just took that as a note for me that I needed to clear out.
Right.
And it wasn't as much fun for me with everyone else starting to show up.
Right.
And so I eventually, when they asked me if I knew where they could rent a motorhome, I thought, hey, they're getting ready. They're planning on leaving.
Right.
And back then you couldn't just go rent an RV anywhere like you can today. And so I convinced myself I needed to show back up at the farm, get my bass, get my albums, and get my records, and say goodbye to the band. Okay. And I left. There was probably another 2 or 3 weeks that they were there that I wasn't toward the end.
So you got to do a proper goodbye.
Yeah.
With most of the members.
Yeah, Jeff,
or all.
Jeff gave me his phone number in the UK and his address, and I basically told everyone goodbye, and that was pretty much the end of it, because I knew word was getting out.
Yeah.
Right.
They actually wanted to stay a couple of weeks later, more than toward the end. They wanted to extend their visit, but Junior was wanting to come back home.
Right.
And in fact, he told me a few years ago, he invited me to come to the farm and have lunch with him. And we had a great, fantastic day talking about all this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Cool. Very cool. So, all right. So now you're officially, your time there is done. excuse me. So you got the bass back. So let's talk about this bass story. So then, for whatever reason, you decide to sell the bass?
Look, I was 19 or 20. I come back home. I've got this bass. You're always seeing a shinier bass or something that you want. And I'm not thinking about the McCartney end of the story. I'm just seeing another bass I want.
Right.
And I found someone that wants to buy it. And he is in a gospel band.
Wow.
And a gospel quartet. And he buys the bass from me. Well, my bandmate, Billy, who was with me the day that I gave it, handed it off to Denny and Alan for Paul.
Yeah.
I have to be tortured every day about.
So Billy's the friend that you eventually took to the farm and he actually got to meet Paul. There's actually a picture with him. And he's in the car, I think, and then there's a picture of you in the car as well, Paul's in the car, and you're shaking his hand, I think. So we'll try to show those pictures too.
Oh, yeah, we'll have, yep.
Billy and I met at about 15. We were both big Beatles fans. That was our interest. Then we were both musicians, so I managed his band in the 70s who toured all across the South, and then I played with him, and still today, for 40-something years in bands. And he's still today, but he's the guy that I eventually, I didn't take a lot of people down there, but eventually I asked him if he'd like to go meet Paul.
Right.
He gets to go meet Paul.
Wow.
And I've collected off of him for 45 years. He's still trying to pay back for it. But he is torturing me through these decades about selling the bass. Why didn't I keep it?
So this is a Rickenbacker?
It's a 74 model Rickenbacker. Paul has a maple one, or he sanded his down. But anyway, I had it because of Paul's influence. I bought it from Manny's Music Shop in New York.
Oh.
And I gave it to Denny to give to Paul.
Okay.
I come back home and I eventually sell it, and then I spend.
Do you remember how much you sold it for?
Oh, it would have been just a few $100s in '74. Okay. It might have been $400, $500, $600.
What did you replace what was the new bass that you ended up getting?
I'm not sure. I mean, I've had so many. It could have been a Hofner. I've got over 100 Hofner basses, 2 signed by Paul, and a lot of other guitars. I'm not sure. I mean, I've gone through so many basses. It could have been anything, whatever, attracted me at the moment.
Right.
But then I realized after being tortured that I need to try to get it back.
So, and then and how long ago, how many years is that you discovered that I want to get this bass back?
Well, I mean, immediately after I sold it, within 6 months, I wanted to get it back.
So you're already regretting.
Buyer's remorse.
Well, I called.
Seller's remorse, really.
I called the new owner and asked him if he would sell it back to me. He was probably in his 40s at the time, and I'm 20. And he said he wouldn't take anything for it. Paul McCartney played the bass, and he wouldn't take anything. So I just kept my eye and ear on it through all these years because I sold it locally, and I knew who had it, but I never thought I'd ever get it back. I just hoped I would.
Right. Wow. So then flash forward, decades later, and then
Eventually, I mean, I would keep tabs. When you live in a small town, you can sort of keep tabs on the instrument without going to the owner and asking them. You can ask a third party, hey, does he still have the bass? Right. And I did a lot of that. In 1995, unfortunately, the man I sold it to passed away.
Okay.
and his obituary showed up in the local paper. And so I did think about what was going to happen to the bass. And eventually, even years after that, I decided I'm never going to see it again or ever own it again. So I'm going to call his family and ask them, can I just come by, spend a final 15 minutes with it, see it, touch it for the last time. I left them a message and they called me back. And I said, I'm the one that sold the bass to your dad. And they told me, well, when he died, it went to his sister, who then suddenly, unexpectedly passed away. And it went to her daughter. And eventually it either got pawned or sold. So I assumed at that point, it's gone. I'm never going to see it again. And I was talking to Billy, my bandmate, about it. And we both had collected a lot of guitars through the years. And I said, well, I didn't write down the serial number. How would we ever know if we find it? Yeah. We looked at the pictures and found 2 marks on it, that's very distinguishing marks. And we figured that would be how we would find it. And he said, because he's out and about a lot in shops and pawn shops and music stores, that he would put it on his iPad, and if he ever ran into it, he would know.
I mean, you would figure like something like this would be like finding a needle in a haystack.
Sure. Especially
it could be anywhere in the world.
After 40 years, sure.
The odds is extremely against it, and I laughed it off when he said putting it on his iPad is, you're just wasting your time, but okay. But on May 19th of 2017, he walked into a local pawn shop where he and I both buy guitars at times, and they told him that they had been meaning to call me about a bass that they had. And he asked them, well, what kind of bass is it? And they said, it's a Rickenbacker.
Now, why would they? Now, did they know that you were looking for this bass, or,
no, but
or why would they?
They know I buy guitars.
Okay.
They know I buy basses, and they had one. They've been meaning to call me about one that they had.
Right.
And then Billy said, "What is it?" They said, "A Rickenbacker." So the light goes off. He said, "What year?" They said 74, so the light goes off again.
Oh, damn.
He asked them what color. They said maple, so it goes off again.
Ding, 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 ding.
Right. And he said, you think Dan would be interested? And he said, if it's the one he's been looking for 42 years, yes. And they said, well, it's been in here for over 10 years.
And you've been going in that store multiple times.
I've been at the counter and even in the back where the
right under your nose.
I'm buying other guitars, and the one I really want is in this building somewhere, and no one remembers it. And so they had sold it the day before. So Billy goes out and gets his iPad. He brings the picture in, sticks it in their face, and they said, that is it. That's the bass.
Right.
But we sold it yesterday. Well, why would it be in there 10 years? Why would it be there 10 years? I said, well, it went in the back. They got a large warehouse. Other stuff came in. It got pushed aside. It got covered up, and it got lost. And they found it the day before and sold it. So now we're tracking the guy down because they said the guy that bought it deals in gold and silver, and he buys instruments just to resell. He doesn't play. He's not a musician. Okay. So they called him and asked him if he had it. He said he did. They asked him if he wanted to sell it. He said he wanted to sell it. That's why he had it. So they put me in touch with him, and I made a deal with him. He didn't know the McCartney story, the significance of the bass.
Now, is there any doubt in your mind at the moment that this is the bass? I mean, are you just flipping out? Are you
at that moment? I didn't know, but I asked for him to send me photographs.
Probably in your best interest to not tell him the McCartney connection to that bass.
Yeah. No, I wasn't gonna create more problems for myself by telling him the history of the bass.
Oh.
Right.
So I eventually he sends me photographs. I tell him about the 2 distinguishing marks, and he finds the 2 marks sends me the photographs, and even he says, this is it.
Mhm.
And so when I see the marks and when Billy sees the marks, we all agree that's it. And I agreed on a price with him, and I agreed to go meet him to pick it up, and I asked him to meet me in Lebanon. He lives near Nashville. I'm on the other side, one side of Lebanon. He's on the other. Let's just meet in Lebanon. And I wanted to meet there because
your wife had the classic response to all of this. Can you tell that story?
Well, when I did see the picture, I was excited about it, and I ran in to show the picture to my wife, who cares really zero about this in any way, shape, or form. And I just, stuck the phone up with the picture, and I said, I think I found my bass after 42 years. And I got this blank. And I just stepped back and continued down the hall to leave. And I sent it to Billy, and Billy called me immediately, and he said, there's no doubt that's the bass. So when I go down to meet the guy to pick it up, he opens the case, and there's a blue notebook in there. And when you open the notebook, it had the name of a church here this man attended in Cookville on it, and it had his name at the top of the sheet. So there was no doubt that it was the bass. It still had some of my components, and it had the strap in it still that he is wearing in this photograph. It still had the strap. So after 42 years, here's what I always like to bring to everyone's attention. How does the guy, Billy, who was there when I gave the bass to Denny.
This is the amazing part of the story. I love this connection.
How does he walk into a pawn shop in my hometown 42 years later and discover the bass?
Mm-hmm.
It's a mind-boggling thing.
Right. It really is interesting that the bass was just so local this whole time.
Yeah.
You know?
There it is.
There it is. Yeah. So the marks you're talking about.
Well, at the bottom of the pick guard, there's a dark spot.
Okay.
And at the top of the pickup, you can see that dark spot.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
And those two spots were the identifying marks that most of these basses do not have on them.
Right.
And beyond that, of course, we confirmed it with the strap, with the sheet music.
Yeah.
That even Denny eventually sees it and says there's no doubt about it.
Right. So you're finally reunited with the bass. Excuse me. And now you want to get some kind of documentation on it. So first person you see during this tour then is Denny Lane then, correct?
You mean bringing him to?
Yeah.
What happens? I come up with the idea. I mean, I was in so much shock.
Right.
To get this thing back. As you could imagine, I can't even fathom this, that it's back. How could this even be possible? I dreamed about this for 45 years. I had not even seen this bass in 42 years. And so I come up with the idea of maybe if I could get Denny on his next tour dates to come do a show near here, we could reunite with the bass. So I was in contact with him, and he agreed to come, and we booked a show near here for him. And I showed up with the bass at his meet and greet. And at the end of the meet and greet, Billy was there with me. We had the pictures blown up, and I said, well, Denny, here's the bass. He says, yeah, well, how do we know it's the same one? Then we pulled out the pictures and the bass, and in about 2 seconds, he said, well, there's no doubt about it.
Do you recall what year this was?
Yes, that was in 2017.
Okay.
And so he poses with me 42 years apart with the same bass. And the great thing about a gospel bass player owning it for all those years is it didn't get any real wear. I mean, it's still very, very clean. So it came full circle.
Yeah.
Now here's a couple things that surfaced during this time. Is I'm backstage with Denny one time. We're talking about the bass, and he says suddenly, Paul wouldn't let me keep it.
Right.
I said, I thought we had moved on in our conversation about this. I said, let you keep what?
So he just has this memory come back to him.
It just blurts out. He says, Paul wouldn't let me keep it. I said, keep what? He said, the bass. Paul wouldn't let me keep the bass. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, once he decided he was not going to keep it, I wanted it. And he wouldn't let me have it. He said, there's only going to be one Rickenbacker in the band.
That's going to be me.
But that's a great piece of information, and it's a very much of a musician thing. Mm-hmm. And so I guess that if it hadn't have been for that, Denny would have the bass still today.
Right.
And I wouldn't. But I mean, we carry on the story. Then I get Denny. Denny signs an affidavit, a statement for me about the bass and its history. Right. And then I go after Jeff Britton.
Right, who you are in continued contact with. I mean, you do talk to him from time to time throughout the years.
Well, I'd actually been more in contact with Denny than I had Jeff. Okay. I talked to Denny in '95 when I was in the UK. I'd had an occasion to talk with Denny again a few years ago about some of his guitars.
Okay.
And then I had sort of reconnected with Denny several times. Now, Jeff and I were pretty good close friends at the farm, and I had his phone number, and I used to call him at the studio. He would be at the recording studio, and he'd say, hey, Paul is hauling for me. I better get back to the session. And I had that kind of relationship with him for a while, and I used to call MPL and talk to Alan on a fairly frequent basis. But when Jeff left Wings, I lost contact.
Okay. Because then he left.
Yeah, he wasn't there all that long.
That was many years that I had no contact, decades, and I went after him to try to find him.
What a lot of people might not know about you too is that you're a private detective.
Yes, I've been a private detective for 34 years, and I have used it for my musical. My real interest is in music, and it's come in handy at times. With James Taylor and Peter Asher and different ones to have a little benefit on locating them. But the problem with Jeff is really after he left Wings, he really didn't want to be found.
Right.
He was in Europe, and he'd played with a lot of different people, had a lot of success in Europe, several different albums and bands. And, of course, the great credit to Jeff was that he auditioned out of 52 drummers to get the role, including beating out Mitch Mitchell for the job of playing with Paul. But, he had done his Wings thing, and he put that behind him, and he just really didn't address any of that anymore. No interviews, no press, anything. So now how am I going to find this guy and reintroduce myself to him after 40 some odd years? And I eventually find him in Spain, and I had a couple attempts to reach him and had been unsuccessful. Finally, I do contact a guitar player he is playing with and sent him a picture of me and Jeff. And I said, I would like to reconnect with him from our time in Nashville if you could help me.
So Jeff is still active as a musician.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. Still playing. He's played in a lot of great groups over. Played with David Byron from Uriah Heep.
Mhm.
Played with East of Eden,
Right.
the Pirates. Done some movie soundtracks. So he's still very active in music. And so I get this guitar player who is connected with him. I send the photograph of me and ask him if he could contact Jeff for me. It had failed in the past, but he said, well, I'll see him tomorrow and we'll see. So the next day, I messaged him on Messenger and I said, did you talk to Jeff for me?
Mm.
He said, he's with me right now and he remembers you. And he gave me his email address.
Oh.
So eventually, I do contact him back and forth through email. We eventually get to phone conversations. And I'd send him pictures of the bass and a lot of the history and about Denny with it and everything. When my first phone call to him after 40 some odd years, Jeff tells me the bass was a problem for Paul. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, he had it up at the garage tinkering with it and playing with it.
Right.
But he had struggled with the idea of keeping a fan's bass. He could have a bass, any bass he wanted in the world.
Right.
But he wasn't comfortable with depriving a fan of his bass. So eventually he decided that he would hang on to it a little while, 2 or 3 weeks, play on it, tinker with it, and then give it back to you. And that way it would mean more to you than it would be if he just kept it.
Right.
Wow.
So that's what happened. So eventually, Jeff, I send a affidavit to Spain, and Jeff signs that for me.
Okay.
And I have no idea that I'm going to eventually convince Jeff to get on a plane and come to Tennessee and go back to Junior's farm with me.
Wow.
And this is 2019, right?
Yes.
Right. So last year. Yeah.
So, I mean, I get the guy who doesn't talk to anyone about Wings
Right.
to get on a plane and come and talk to everyone about Wings.
Wow.
And we go back to the farm. I connect Denny and Jeff again by video for the first time in 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a real magical thing. And I get to play my Rickenbacker
Right.
with Jeff, me and Billy, who were both at the farm with Jeff.
Right.
We do a concert and a meet and greet here, and he signs all day long, meets everyone, and it was a fabulous thing.
Wow.
Wow.
Is there a video of that?
Pardon me?
Is there a video of that?
Yes, there's video on YouTube.
Okay.
You can see Jeff. We do Junior's Farm, and
Okay.
the other thing, he plays a couple of my band songs. I mean, how great is that to have Wings drummers playing your song? You know.
Yeah.
But I mean, now, Jeff and I have renewed our friendship. We talk often, and we're in a couple of books together coming up.
Yep.
In the near future.
Well, here, let me grab it here. I think this is it. You guys, your story is in Paul McCartney After the Beatles. This is Adrian Allen's second version. Actually, no, I'm sorry, that was the first one. This is your story is also here,
Volume 2,
in Volume 2 in Adrian Allen's book, and then he also has an interview with Jeff Britton in this book as well.
I set that interview up for Jeff. I've encouraged Jeff to get out and let people know his history.
Right.
And he's such Jeff is a fantastic guy, fantastic drummer, and a music historian.
Mm-hmm.
And so not having him being referred to and telling his information in these books is just
right.
something I've tried to encourage him to do. There's another book coming out by Adrian.
Oh, Adrian Sinclair and Alan Cozen. They're working
Yep.
on the
McCartney Legacy.
McCartney Legacy right now, and and that's cool. I'm glad to hear that Jeff agreed to be interviewed for that book as well. That's just going to make that book a lot better too.
Well, the thing about it is, for myself, I reach out to do this because, hey, I was just a fan like you guys and like all your listeners.
Mm-hmm.
Just a fan, and I had this dream, and it came true. And I love for people to, they come, they see the bass. I read the story about when Buddy Holly died, that his parents had his guitar at their house, and that the fans would come by and they would pull out Buddy's guitar and he would let them play it. Well, people come here to see me and they see the guitar and they play. I mean, how much of an opportunity do you get to do it? And I just love it because they're fans and I'm a fan, and we can all connect on that.
Such a great fan story that you just don't hear a lot of these days, because you just can't can't penetrate that circle anymore like you could back then. You know?
Well, I'm fortunate because through all these years, I've maintained a friendship with two members of Wings. I teased Denny, giving bottles of Elvis wine, sort of a joke. And a friend of mine called me. He said, "Hey, I'm going to see Denny in Chicago tomorrow." I said, "Hey, take him a bottle of Elvis wine," because he doesn't really like it, but it's sort of an ongoing joke. So I wake up the next morning with a video from my friend with Denny pointing out that I'm still sending the Elvis wine. And I'm honored by Denny saying that I was one of their best friends during the Wings period. I mean, what an honor that is to hear that from Denny.
I mean, you were their connection. You were their guy. I mean, you had so much information that you could give them to help them throughout that whole time that you were there. Like you said, where can we get a pedal steel guitar player? I mean, where can we get, like with an RV or whatnot? I mean, you were
strangers in a strange land. We're a bunch of British people in Nashville.
You became very valuable.
Well, what's funny, for a while there, like I said, I could call up MPL and Alan would get on the phone with me and tell me what's going on. And when I went there in '95 to Soho Square to Paul,
that's right.
Yep.
I waited and I watched how, maybe I shouldn't tell this, but them buzzing people in. And when they buzzed the courier in, I went in behind them and I asked for some stationery.
Secrets of the private dick.
The secrets of the private eye. But,
there you go.
But Alan was on the phone, so I didn't get to see him, but I asked for some stationery to write him a letter. I wrote him a letter, and somehow a couple of pieces of the stationery ended up still in my possession.
Hey, Dan, when you went there in '95, was the Tug of War mural still on the wall in the office? Because it was when I visited in 2003.
I don't know. I don't know that I recall that. I was so focused on a lot of other things. I met Stella outside the house on Cavendish, but I thought she was a fan, and she called the police on me.
Oh, gee.
I thought she was a fan, but she was cleaning the gate with a brush and a bucket, and I guess I surprised her. I said, "Looks like you found the place," and she ran in and called the police. But it would have been great to have a conversation with her about seeing her when she was only 2.
It's funny that your encounters with the kids were more troublesome than your encounters with Paul.
Yeah, well, it's true. I went to Paul's farm. I went to Scotland to his farm, and Bill Heckle, who owned the Cavern at the time, and '95 invited me to come to the Cavern and meet.
Still does.
Oh, is he still on it?
Still owns it. Yep.
And invited me to meet Pete Best and Alan Williams and John Lennon's Uncle Charlie there. So I did the whole Beatles pilgrimage thing in '95.
Wow, amazing.
Well, I lived there for 2 years, so I know a lot of those players quite well in Merseyside.
Well, I was on TV with Peter Brown and that's on YouTube too. If you look at
Okay, we'll have to check that out as well.
Uh,
So just going back to '74 real quick, talk about your thought process as in, you're hearing Junior Farms on the radio, the song that you've heard constantly nonstop while you're experienced there on the farm.
Well, what happened is, I told you I heard this riff that I didn't know what it was.
Right.
And then I hear a song that I don't know what it is. And then they leave, and in October of '74, I'm driving down the interstate. I always listened to WLS Chicago with John Records Landecker, and it would only come on here after the sun went down. Mm-hmm. So I was always at my radio trying to get 89 on the dial. When the sun would go down, it would sort of fade in, and then finally it's there, and I hear a new song by Paul McCartney. Right. Bam! It hits, and I hear the riff, and I had to drive to a telephone to call, and I called WLS, and I was really excited because that was what I heard standing outside the garage. I suddenly connected that, and so it made sense to me that I was probably one of the first people ever
to hear
the song.
Yeah.
Wow. The scary thing for them is I actually had a recording of the whole song. Can you imagine what that could have done to them if that got out before they released it, But I still have that, and it's great. Every time I hear Junior's Farm, it's magical.
Right. I imagine. What are your thoughts of Sally G? I mean, are you a country music fan? I mean, did it impress you that the fact that this rock and roller was able to do such a great country song? Because I think it's great.
Well, yeah, I love Sally G because it's history. Plus, Paul has his own flair to it that just takes it to a whole different level.
Right.
And Lloyd Green played steel guitar on it. When Jeff Britton was here last year, then he reconnected with Lloyd.
Oh, wow.
Down in Nashville. And you gotta love Sally G.
Oh, absolutely.
Clement was, I think he was on the fiddles. And if you listen to it, a lot of like Paul's songs, they have their own signature to them, so it doesn't. It's country, but it's
right. It's his country. It's not,
there's a book that my friend Don Cusick, who's a music historian and on the board of directors at Studio B, Mike Curb Foundation. He called me up and asked me if I wanted to be in his book. It's called The Beatles and Country Music, which he took each one of the Beatles and he told about their influence.
Yeah, absolutely. They got an absolute big influence in country.
And hey, Sally G is, I love it. And Junior's Farm plays probably at my house daily.
Right.
And I never get tired of it.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just say I never get tired of hearing it.
Right.
That's great.
When I was in Nashville a few years back for a cousin's wedding, there's a country museum downtown Nashville. And I forgot the name of the place now, and I lost all those pictures that I took. But there's pictures of McCartney, while recording Sally G, and then his time on the farm as well. And I'm really dreading, losing those pictures because I couldn't remember if you were in like a picture or two with his experience down the farm. Because there is some shots of him on the farm, in that museum, and then in the recording studio as well. So,
well, I had met the engineer. His name's escaping me at the moment, but he passed away, I think, last year. But I had met him in Nashville before. We talked about our experiences. He was recording him at the sound shop in the studio. And I was recording it at the farm in the yard. you know. But it's quite a story that Paul came to Nashville, spent that time here, and I had a dream of meeting him, and it somehow came true. And then the bass thing through all these years. When I met Paul for the first time at the farm, when I came back home, I told my friends, I didn't initially say I met Paul McCartney. I went in and I said, hey, I just met Beethoven. Which was, and they said, I said, no, it was actually Paul McCartney. And I said, but 1,000 years from now, when we're all dead and gone,
right,
they'll still be talking about Paul McCartney and Beethoven. So that was my equivalent, you know.
Awesome.
Very fair comparison.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Now you have a Facebook page, and you show a lot of the pictures, and talk about that.
It's called Paul McCartney and Wings at Junior's Farm, and I share a lot of anything that comes my way on that page, and we'd like to have anyone who'd like to come on board with us there. I'll keep you up to date on the history of Junior's Farm. The amazing thing is things are still surfacing after all these years. That's one of the pictures of me with Paul with the shirt on.
Right. Yeah.
Did not show up until 3 years ago.
Right. So there's actually now the shirt you gave him with the birds on it. You know, I think if people are familiar with biographies of McCartney, he used to go bird watching. So, and he's got a lot of bird names in his songs or whatnot. But during the 75-76 tour, there was that, I think on his birthday one year, there's photos of him getting the cake thrown in his face, and he's got that shirt on.
Yeah, I mean, I bought the shirt because I knew he liked black.
Okay.
I knew black's his favorite color, and it had all that hand embroidery all over it. And then what you don't see, unless you're really looking for it, you can see it in a highlight in some pictures, is I had Paul embroidered on the collar.
Oh, wow.
And when I took it down to Alan and gave it to him for Paul, I mean, I took gifts every day. I never imagined that I would ever see him wearing the shirt, but he wore it in 74 on his birthday on June 18th. And then at the LA Forum in 76 backstage on his birthday, he has it on again. I mean, how can it get any better than that, to have your idol wearing the shirt you gave him on his birthday on 2 different occasions?
Yeah, 2 different times.
Right. So did you go see the Wings Over America show then in 76?
I didn't go see it because I was working a lot. A friend of mine, I mean, if I had known this was going to occur, I would have gone. He goes to Detroit to see the show, and he's up near the stage, and he sees Trevor Jones, who was the roadie.
Yeah.
I didn't like being called a roadie because he told me, I don't like being called a roadie. Right. But he was in Nashville with them, and he asked my friend, where is Dan? And I have to hear that when he comes back from the concert. Hey, they were asking about you. I mean, what if I had been there?
Right.
I might have been backstage.
Absolutely.
But no, I never made it to see him on the 76 tour. I think all my friends, I went to see Paul 2 different occasions, once in Nashville and in Atlanta.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Great stories. Thank you so much, Dan, for sharing these with us. Can you put up the bass one more time and show the bass one more time? Now, and then tell people about the sticker that you've got on there. The Red Rose Speedway.
Paul had a sticker like that on his bass at the farm. He is Rickenbacker.
Right.
And so, hey, I thought it was cool, so I had one made up. And a lot of people, I have them on eBay, so a lot of people who like that, they'll get a sticker. It's a vinyl sticker. You can put it on and pull it off.
Okay.
It doesn't really hurt the bass any, but you can see it's in really good shape.
Right.
I mean, really excellent shape.
Mm-hmm.
After all these years, if we could extract some DNA, maybe
Right.
we could get a little Paul DNA off of it, maybe. But his basses just don't get out of his possession. I asked Bass Player Magazine when they were talking to me about it one time. I told them the story, and I said, well, did Paul own the bass? And they said, well, yeah, he owned it for 3 weeks. And you just don't get your hands on a bass that Paul has played. His Hofner that was called the presentation bass was made for him. He never took possession of it, and he never played it. But it ended up selling in '95 for $160,000. Right. So who knows about the Junior's Farm bass one of these days,
Right. Wow. Amazing.
So you guys, the next time, you guys need to come to Tennessee.
Oh, absolutely.
And play the bass. Then I'll tell you all the stories that I couldn't tell you on the bass.
Oh, wow.
Awesome. For sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dan. This has been a thrill to hear these stories, and amazing. I'd love to hear some more stories. One day too. I'm glad to come down, and meet you down there.
Road trip.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
road
hey, people's come here from New York, from the UK, from Louisiana, California. And my son always asks me, Dad, are you meeting people on the internet again? But listen, Beatles and McCartney fans are the best in the world.
Yeah.
They come, and I love to have them come. So
it's a great community.
Yes, absolutely.
Certainly is.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Is there any way people can contact you, or if anything like that? Or you're on Facebook as well, right?
I'm on Facebook, and then they can go to the Junior's Farm page and message me. I'm always there.
Okay.
As a private investigator, I'm actually pretty easy to reach.
Okay.
I'm not very hard to contact. You can find me on Facebook or on the Paul McCartney and Wings Junior's Farm page.
So, awesome. Well, thank you once again. This has been great. Andy, anything else you'd like to?
No, thanks for sharing all the great stories, Dan. It's going to be a good episode to put up, and all the pictures that you have will complement this episode very nicely, and the letter too, of course. So,
well, thank you guys for having me. I would just encourage anyone. You can just Google Dan Ealey, Ealey, Paul McCartney, and you can see a lot of the stories and the videos.
Yep.
That's
you've been on TV shows, you've been on local news and stuff like that, talking about this as well.
Yeah, they had me on with Peter Brown. I have this interview. It's never been out on him, where I interview him backstage, and he talks about Mal Evans was the drug guy for the Beatles.
Oh yeah.
So I have a few things that I've just held on to, and it's never come out. So maybe in the future we'll have more.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. That'd be great. Love to hear more stories. Absolutely. So thank you once again, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Like Andy said, we're going to try to incorporate a lot of these pictures for the YouTube version. So if you're listening to the audio versions, eventually come over to YouTube and check that version out as well. And that way you can see the bass, the actual bass. You can see these pictures that Dan's been talking about throughout this episode. So once again, thank you all for listening. Again, you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Two Legs Podcast. You can email us at twolegpodcast@gmail.com. Our YouTube channel is Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast, so please check that out and subscribe to that, so that way you can get all these wonderful stories. And what else is there? I think that's it. Podbean, iTunes, iHeartRadio. So we're all over the net. The audio version is all over the place as well, so you can check us out there. thank you very much. Keep the comments coming. Keep the emails coming. We love to see all your comments and emails. We really appreciate it. So once again, everybody out there, for Dan, for my buddy Andy, I'm Tom, and as always, have a great day and a beautiful night. Take care. I love it. Yes. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Listening to Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast, hosted by Tom Hunyady and Andy Nicholes, with musical contributions by Dylan